and I drove from Hazard to Lexington from one company to the other on a regular basis every week. And there's a 3800 engine with a supercharger. I'd get 24.8, 24.9 going to Lexington, from Hazard to Lexington. After 4 or 5 trips of using the Ethos, the last trip I drove it, before I sold it to my manager of the company, it went from 24.8, 24.9, it went to 30.5 miles per gallon.
Wow.
And that's about 120 miles trip. But that was my personal experience with it on a gasoline engine.
Mm-hmm.
And I got an employee of 20 years. He runs my off-road tire company, and he's also got some coal trucks, a side job.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's a 1982 RD 800 Mac.
Okay.
But it's a tandem. They carry 30 tons of coal from the mine pit to the tipple site.
Mm-hmm.
But he started using this. His driver, you know, he shows up at 4 o'clock in the morning and he goes home, but he don't have anything to do with the maintenance. Well, they applied the Ethos to the oil, and then he treated his fuel. And from Monday up to about Wednesday, I guess that was the cleaning effect. He used 3 or 4 tanks, like several hundred gallons of diesel over from Monday through Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
So Harless, the employee, he ran across his driver. I don't even know his name, but he asked, the driver said, "Did you put a new engine in that truck?" He said, "No." I said, "Why?" He said, "Man, I've gained a gear." He said, "When I changed gears, it don't smoke anymore." And those Macs have got what they call a pyrometer. It's an exhaust heat gauge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He said
It dropped.
the exhaust heat gauge, he called it pyrometer, is dropped 3.5 numbers.
Yep.
Which is about 35 to 40 degrees.
Yep.
But he said, I've gained a gear going uphill. So this boy, unknowing, he didn't know anything about the application. All he knew that his truck was tremendously better in 3 days after 300 or 400 gallons of diesel fuel.
Right.
They probably used, 75 to 100 gallons a day.
Mm-hmm.
So that was amazing to me on a diesel engine. And the other thing that I remember distinctly, got a doctor that lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's got a contract with the hospital in Hazard. He works 1 week a month. He's got a Toyota Tundra. He came in the Goodyear Service Center. That's where I got my office. That's where I operate through 7 or 8 companies, but that basically stay there. So he was reading that Ethos brochure, and make a long story short, I guess he wanted to try it. So he bought a gallon. So about 3 weeks later, when he came back, he went home to Charlotte. 3 weeks later, he come back for his 1 week contract for the hospital. So he pulls in my parking spot. That's why I noticed him so quick. Not many people park in my spot. But anyway, when he came in, I think to myself, he's upset about this Ethos. Huge guy, 6'3" and about 4 foot wide. But he came in, the first thing he said, "Give me 2 more gallons of that stuff." I said, "Man, you won't use a gallon in a year." Well, he said, "I've researched and studied this and the usage." He said, "I want a gallon for my son and a gallon for my son-in-law." He said, "I've got a scan gauge." Are you aware of what a scan gauge is?
Yeah.
He had a scan gauge hooked into his computer, and he'd get about 18 miles a gallon on that V8 Toyota Tundra, which they're not very good on fuel.
Mm-hmm.
And he invited my manager out, which he's a computer guru. He's sharp. He's my right arm. He's my brain. But anyway, he goes out and the first thing he done, he just put in scan gauge in the computer and it popped the picture up. He said, "Well, just come out here and look at mine." He said, look, I want you to show you the fuel economy from Charlotte to Hazard. It was 23.8 mile a gallon the first trip, from 18 to 23.8. He said, I'll top that at 27 miles per gallon. He'd studied and researched it. He knew more about it than I did. So, you know, it's a, I read 3 or 4 days when I discovered it. I was clicking on NASCAR. I'm not real good on a computer, but this pop-up